Warning, this video contains graphic images which some people may find disturbing. Viewers' discretion is advised.
Not GPS.
Fucking 10 feds! All the police are
Daniel,
no.
Daniel, listen. We're here because somebody said there was an accident. Daniel, put it down. Put it down now. Put it down. Put it down now. Put it down now. Put it down. Put your hands on the floor. Get down. Put your hands behind your back now.
Since the early 2000s, Taser has revolutionized the way police deal with violent crime. Police today risk their lives attending a large amount of violent incidents across the country with Taser at their side. But how is the device used by those officers arriving on scene, and are the headlines accurate?
So I think the public's awareness of what police officers have to deal with today is fundamentally different to where it was 14 years ago.
We do know that in certain circumstances it can be fatal. Rare, but it can happen.
So law enforcement, we've been on a long journey since 2004 when Taser was sort of introduced into the UK and agreed as a tactic for policing by the UK government. I think the journey that we've seen is that we've seen a lot of the usage. I think as we've seen the introduction of body-worn cameras, some of the footage has been shared of the types of situations that officers face when they actually deploy Taser. And I think we've moved to a position where we've engaged with communities, we've engaged with quite a lot of lobby groups to be in a position where we can be really confident that Taser is being used in an appropriate way.
Taser originally came along to fill that gap between a baton and a firearm, somewhere in the middle for high levels of threat faced by police officers and members of the public.
So the new X2 model was brought in 2017, and it's, technically it's a development on the previous model. And I think one of the things for policing is always to make sure that we're at the forefront of technology and we're using the best equipment available in order to deliver a duty as police officers. And it is a huge development on the previous model.
The latest version of the Taser, the X2, I suppose gives police officers a second chance should the first cartridge fail to subdue the subject.
What we're talking about here is less lethal technology, and technology advances all the time. One of the things that has an advantage for this particular weapon over the other models is that the battery that comes with it stops working after 5 seconds. So it's got an automatic safety feature that means that after 5 seconds the weapon powers down. Now, as a human rights organisation, and because of our work on previous Tasers, we can tell you categorically that one of the key risks of the weapon was when it was used in prolonged mode. So for the old models, you could essentially put your finger on the trigger and multiply shock for loads and loads and loads of time, 17, 18, 19 seconds, or until the battery ran down. And quite often we would find that a lot of the most serious incidents, and unfortunately some of the fatalities, including one in the UK, one of the contributory facts to where the weapon went wrong was the fact that it was used in prolonged cycles. And quite often that's not because of any deliberate desire on the police officer to inflict prolonged tasering on someone. It's simply that in the heat of the moment, people quite often hold the trigger and forget they're holding the trigger.
Taser is a distance control tool. It is a conductive energy device that sends current down the wires to a target to incapacitate that target. Taser can only be used in incidents of violence or threats of violence, and it can be used in any other way. It's not a tool of compliance, it's a tool of control. Taser's definitely saved my life. Taser saved my life on numerous occasions. I recall a time in 2009 where the frontline police had just been allowed to be carry Taser, and a guy had taken his ex-partner hostage, so to speak. We were called as a Taser crew to support the officers on scene to the guy who'd taken his wife hostage. He was armed with a baseball bat and was threatening anyone that came into address was going to have the baseball bat wrapped around the head. As the on-scene Taser crew, Jeff and I were talking to the guy. We were going through the 5-step appeal. We were trying to reason with him, trying to make him understand and work with us that we were trying to get a resolution to the matter. But at which point he starts laughing at us, goes and puts the gas taps on full onto the address with the intention, as he tells us, of blowing up the street and ending his life and as many cops as he could. So I asked the method of entry team to break the window. So they broke the window. I went through the window with the Taser out. I deployed Taser as the guy was coming down with the baseball bat, trying to hit me on the head with the baseball bat. Luckily, I've got a really good probe spread, I've got neuromuscular incapacitation, and the member of the public has dropped to the floor. The fight was instantly taken out of him. We were able then to get the door unlocked. We were able to get him under control. He was absolutely safe. He had no injury after that experience. The fight had been taken out of him straight away. He was taken into custody where he went and received appropriate help and support.
In circumstances such as this, the challenge for police officers is to be able to terminate the violence as safely as possible, minimising the risk of injury to all parties involved. But is this level of force appropriate?
You know, we can see officers using the baton, we can see officers using their handcuffs to be able to restrain somebody who's intent on being violent. And obviously as things escalate, we then reach the point where if an officer is there with Taser, that is the most proportionate and appropriate method to effectively resolve an incident.
Taser is designed to help police officers terminate high levels of violence, high threats, to bridge that gap between using a baton and using a police dog or a handgun. And by and large, when used in accordance with the law and in accordance with the police officers' training, represents the safest option that the police have at this time.
I haven't seen a single person that's been tasered, I haven't personally, but anything that's been tasered and come out of it and said, yeah, this was a lovely experience. They've all said, I don't want to do that again. Because of that, the weapon is put in a very specific, special category of weapon. It's unlike other types of weapons.
You know, I can say it's safe because, you know, Taser, the way that we've implemented Taser is in a very measured way. We've involved government scientists, we've involved the medical practitioners to make sure that we've had a really, really thorough assessment of Taser as a device and the impact and effect of it as a device.
Police officers are culpable for their actions while using the Taser and understand misuse could lead to prosecution. But with this in mind, what are the risks and are there any concerns?
There are obviously a number of concerns around using any less lethal weaponry, and I think that's the important consideration here. It's a less lethal, it's not a non-lethal weapon, and we do know that in certain circumstances it can be fatal. Rare, but it can happen. It can also inflict severe pain, as the 50,000 volts of electricity ripping through your body is an incredibly painful experience. So our concerns are essentially about the impacts of the weapon when it's misused, and we know from the UK's own medical studies that there is a risk that it can affect the heart. We know that if it's used against young people, it can more likely have negative effects, not just from a physical point of view, but also a psychological point of view. We know that when it's used in a mental health setting, similar risks can occur.
So we're beginning to learn that yes, there is absolutely a risk of injury when using Taser. That risk remains very, very low for the vast majority of people, for the vast majority of the time. However, on occasion, Taser, in certain circumstances, may be a contributory factor to a catastrophic outcome. The use of Taser must be lawful, that is reasonable, proportionate and necessary, when no other use of force option is likely to terminate the conflict without causing significant injury or death.
Deploying a Taser is not a risk-free weapon, and for certain groups it carries a number of acute risks.
The media often report on police Taser use broadly, but by dissecting the handling of the device, we begin to understand that the usage falls into two categories: discharge and non-discharge. Drawn, aimed, arced and red dot fall under non-discharge, whilst drive stun, angled drive stun and fired fall under discharge of the device.
In this country, my understanding is that on 2 cases, the coroner has implicated Taser as a contributory factor in a subject's death. Now, we need to understand the common denominator that has been used many, many thousands of times, and in cases where, sadly, there has been a death, there have been other factors at play, either the underlying health of the individual, associated injuries, or an unknown medical condition at the time.
According to statistics provided by the Home Office, between April 2017 and March 2018, the police used the Taser at approximately 17,000 incidents. In 85% of those cases, the Taser was not discharged. The Taser was only discharged at 2,000 of these incidents. However, statistics show from between April 2018 and March 2019, the incidents police attended where Taser was used rose to 23,000, but the level of discharge remained the same.
Because it's a controversial weapon, because it has a high degree of media and public scrutiny, it's very, very susceptible to cases of where it goes wrong. So you do tend to see much stronger public concern in incidents where there's a problem. So that's why I think it's really important to ensure that the weapon is used in the most responsible situations. It's quite hard to get an accurate picture of what people actually think, because the question that's being put is quite often from one side or the other. So a lot of the opinion polls have come from people that are very strongly supportive of giving Taser to everybody.
Understandably, concern over the consequences of Taser usage means it still does not have universal support today. However, police have taken actions to minimise the effect of the device. But does this affect perceptions of Taser?
I think the fundamental difference for me since the introduction of Taser is how, our transparency of police usage of Taser with the people who have a view or an opinion or are affected by it really helps to secure the legitimacy as Taser as an appropriate piece of police equipment for us to use.
Let's be clear, right? In most cases, the UK police force don't make mistakes with the weapon. They're in a highly trained and very, very strongly policed system, but mistakes do happen.
And I think if Taser is used appropriately in accordance with the law and the training that the police undergo and the ethical constraints of using Taser, then I think it has a role, and it has proven itself around the world as a device to terminate conflict in high-risk situations.
So unique success stories for Taser, I would just really encourage people, you can look on YouTube, you can look on the internet, you can see lots of examples, and my friends and family that aren't in policing would look at them, and most of those incidents that they look at, they think, thank goodness I'm nowhere near that, because I would want to run away from it. And I would just really like to really thank those officers that do choose to carry Taser, and officers that are out there 24/7 dealing with incidents that really most people just want to run away from.